So earlier in the season I grafted this pear. This was just a rootstock that I had growing. It was actually like, I think there was an intergraft section in it, and the top, the scion, didn't ever make it. It was shipped to me, and it was basically dead on arrival, except the rootstock was still alive. So I planted the rootstock, let it grow, and then I've grafted this this pear variety, and I think this is the Moon Glow that I have at the front there. And it's just a good producer, and it seems to be resistant to the fire blight. So I thought I would graft it onto this rootstock and have a new pear tree going. I grafted it, and then I allowed some of these shoots on the rootstock to grow because it needs to be bringing in nutrients in order to survive, and you can't just trim all these things off and then have it put all its energy into the graft, because the graft is not healthy enough. So you need to leave some of these extra shoots on for the rootstock to survive for the season. And but at this point, when we see that the graft has taken so well and it's got some good strong shoots on it, then we're going to just trim off these extra shoots, so that then it will put all of its energy into the scion and the new graft. Now that this thing is pretty well established, we're just gonna cut all that off. It'll keep the tape on and let it continue to grow through the graft there and strengthen through the season. And next year I'll be transplanting it. So this is the Dancing Rabbit orchard here, and we used to have a bunch of peach trees in here. We have some pears still, Asian pears and European pears, but most of our peach trees have died since they were planted, you know, when this was started like 20 years ago or so. But a couple of years ago we replanted the orchard in apples, which are likely to live a lot longer and also might produce better in our climate, because the peaches just never really produced much because of disease, wetness, brown rot. They'd get a lot of disease here, so that's why they didn't last very long. But the apple varieties that I've planted here are resistant to fire blight, so we're hoping they'll survive that. And we planted out all these apples, and sometimes people mow in here with the tractor and they end up accidentally running over the small trees. So that's what happened to this one, and so I've regrafted the rootstock. So you can see that there are no lower shoots on this graft here on the rootstock, and just the new growth on the scion wood. But like the pear that I just showed you, this did have some shoots on the rootstock, and I've just recently trimmed those off, and now it's putting all of its energy into the new scion wood. And this is I think a Rome. That's the variety, and we have another one over there, and so I just took a cutting of that early in the season and got it onto this rootstock as soon after I cut it off the tree as possible, and it took pretty well. Both of these scion woods, I was a little bit worried because they didn't appear to have signs of life right away, but it's kind of a lesson that you should just let it go, and also make sure that the rootstock has some healthy growth on it. This scion wood, not too long after I grafted it, I thought it was dried out because it looked a little bit shrivelly, but then obviously it took, and now it looks really healthy. So grafting is so much easier than you might think. It might seem like an insurmountable thing and like difficult, and you need a lot of skill to do it, but really it doesn't take that much skill. And it's a great craft to learn, because then you can do just so much with fruit trees. I mean, I just think about it, and like there's a pear variety right there. It's a sugar pear. I think it's a Seckle, and I could just take a cutting of that, put it on some pear rootstock that I have growing, and then I can start my own tree of that variety, whatever it is, you know. If you have an old tree that you find on a farmstead, that has an interesting flavor or good storage qualities, then you can just ask that farmer if you can take the cutting of it and then get your own started. And obviously one of the other potentials of grafting is that you can graft onto dwarfing rootstock. So you can have like a semi-dwarf tree or a dwarf tree that are not as big as a standard, and so you don't need a tall ladder to harvest from them or to prune them. It also is more convenient having a smaller tree if you have a smaller space. You can also, with dwarfs, you can get a lot of different varieties and their qualities. A lot of times a standard tree for like one family provides way more than enough fruit that they need for a season. So having, you know, multiple dwarf varieties allows you to have that variety for different uses, and then you're not overwhelmed with fruit of just one variety. So this is that pear graft that I made earlier in the season, and you can see it's taken pretty well, and has gotten pretty big for one season and with a graft. But it might prove a little difficult to transplant. We'll have to see. These are aronias, which get mixed reviews. Some people say they're kind of worthless, but they're supposed to be some kind of a superfruit. I haven't tried them yet, and they're not quite ripe, so we'll see what they taste like.
Banjo. Good girl. Good girl. Good girl, Banjo. Are you just sitting on your sand pile? Huh?
Alright, well, please subscribe to my channel and share and like the video, and I'll see you next time.